Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. My name is Zaida Taseh. Today I will share our best practices at the faculty under the topic of digitalizations of education in Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities through educating and humanizing. So let us look on the aim of these best practices. We call the best practices also as DG Edu. The aim is to empowering the future-proof talents through educating and humanizing. With that, the objective of our best practices FSSH DG Edu are to initiate, strengthen and cultivate digital learning and teaching during the unprecedented event like COVID-19, to develop equilibriums of emotional well-being and spiritual among staff and students during the pandemic, to promote sustainability and knowledge transfer to the stakeholders and society. And through DG Edu, we initiate the empowerment of future-proof talents through educating and humanizing, and this is encapsulated via FSSS Hearts initiative, Happy, Empathy, Appreciate, Responsible, and Trust. My presentation will cover on the 7 components of business continuity management, which is we will start with the first criteria on mission and vision. Our 3 objective of DG Edu are aligned with UTM mission, which is actually to develop the holistic talents and prosper life through knowledge and innovative technology. The objective also align with FSSH mission, which is actually to develop and advance holistic talent in social sciences and humanities through innovative and sustainable academic program and research. We actually align our DG Edu objective also with the national e-learning policy known as the PAN, where at the phase 3 2021 to 2025, 70% of all courses offered by each IPT are required conducted in the form of blended learning. In addition, 50% e-assessment need to be implemented in blended learning. Who are the stakeholders who are involved in our best practices? There are 3 groups of stakeholders are involved with these best practices. The first group is academicians, the second one is non-academicians, and of course the last one, students. The group of these stakeholders involved as a contributors and the audience, where as a contributors they are the ones who involved in contributing the online learning and teaching materials, conducting the online learning and teaching, helping also the runnings of online learning at the faculty. As an audience also, they are the one who receive the benefit from these best practices. How do we plan for these DG Edu best practices? We actually come up with a planning on 6 projects or initiative. The first one is on blended and online learning. The second one is on alternative assessment. The third one is program learning outcome MQF 2.0 rubric and e-rubric system. We call it as FSSK rubric Gen 2.0, the online interview for School of Education UG program, the empowering of future ready educators at FSSH, and the last one is developing the online materials for learning and teaching known as Omelette. Through these 6 initiatives, we believe that our best practices on digitalizations of education at the Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities is holistic, because it's not only covered on the blended and online learning, but it also covered on assessment. It's also covered on the guideline to grade student assignment, and it is also covered on how to interview the students through online learning medium, and how do we empower the future ready educators so that our academicians are ready towards our best practices. And of course, last not least is that we produce online materials for learning and teaching known as Omelette. After we plan all the 6 initiatives, how do we implement it? So when we implement the initiative, we implement it according to the objective. For example, for objective number 1, the learning and teaching initiative during COVID-19 pandemics, we have what we call it open distance learning program at the master level. We actually focusing also on blended learning and online learning task force. We set up the alternative assessment task force. We set up also the FSSH Future Ready Educator Task Force to try to strengthening their roles. We have the online global classroom, and we develop Omelette, the online repository system. Through the objective number 2, objective number 2 is more to try to balance the emotion and stress among the staff. Through that, we have several initiatives which are the online work-life webinar that we conducted, where the students and the lecturers can share their experience during the COVID-19 pandemics. We set up the online office hour to support the students who are not here in UTM. We set up the internal crisis management team. We also offered online learning buddy system, online clinics, online facilitators, e-help desk, and also we try to tackle the component of FSSH so that everybody's actually in a good conditions and health and well-being. For the last research objective, we have few projects, that initiative that we able to implement it in 2020. The first one is the sharing session by the support staff. The second one is the online interview guidelines. The guideline has been used as a standardized documents among all the panels, so that everybody is going to use the same process, the same scheme for interviewing the students. The free newsletter, we set up and we produce free newsletter just for a sharing platform on the best practices of the lecturers to others. We also produce what we call it Digitalization Report, as for record and for sharing to people not only at our faculty but outside faculty and outside UTM on our experience on digitalizations of educations during the COVID-19 pandemics. We also produce what we call it the alternative assessment guideline, a guideline that has been used by all of our academicians during the COVID-19 pandemics, so that to make sure everybody is actually on the right track. So how do we do it along the way on implementing these best practices? We divide the implementation process according to the initiative. For the blended and online learning, it had been started actually as early as January, because at the faculty we decided that to support the national e-learning policy. So we thought that it's about time in 2020 30% of all courses at the Faculty of Social Science and Humanities will be conducted online. While on March, when COVID-19 struck Malaysia, and we're having the MCO and all classes are online, at that moment it looks like we are quite ready to continue our business as usual, because we have been planning earlier than what has been happened for the COVID. And then throughout the way, on April, we set up our trainings, online learning clinics, the buddy system to support those who are actually having problem to conduct classes through online, especially the seniors, professors, and all those who did not actually familiar enough with the online learning tools. So we set also the process of clinics to help, and we we use a proactive initiative where we contact the everyone's who having problems to conduct their class to the online medium. So by 1st of April, we proudly would like to announce that 100% of our courses has been conducted online. And along the way, at the middles of the semesters on July and August, we have our talk shows just to for a platform for the lecturers to share their experience conducting class through the online learning medium. We also have a talk on online learning, so to expose or to increase the visibility of the lecturers, and also to share student experience with others outside UTM. And on end of the year, we able to produce a report on how we digitalize our educations during the COVID-19 pandemics, and we able to produce also edited books with the titles of technology tools for online learning under penerbit UTM. Next, under the alternative assessment, we have been started also early on April, where we set up the task force. We set up also the series of workshop on designing the online tests in UTM e-learning tools and approach, in designing alternative online tests, the test blueprint and higher order thinking item developments, using e-learning for take-home exam, and we able to produce what we call it a guideline for online test and take-home exam. And we also have a special weighting on exam questions according to the formats of exam questions that been developed by the lecturers. And along the way on August, we able to copyrighted our guidelines, and we're able to submit also the course information supplements, the appendix 2, to accompany our course instruction, to show later to the panels of auditors that what have been done on assessments to cater on the COVID-19 pandemics. Next, we not only focusing on alternative assessment. To help the lecturers, we produce a PLO, Program Learning Outcome MQF 2.0 rubric, where we started is on April. The task force, several workshop has been conducted to revise the rubric according to the 11th PLO, based on MQF 2.0. And on October, we developed the e-rubric system where the lecturers can use it to grade student assignments, to assess any program learning outcome, especially the soft skills related program learning outcome. And the rubric is actually a dynamic rubric. The lecturers can adjust the rubric according to the needs of their courses. And next, as we know that the student at the School of Educations under the Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities, they have to go through an interview process. So during MCO, we can't actually conduct face-to-face interview, but we need to select the students to enter UTM. So what we did is that we set up an online interview sessions for School of Education UG program. To set up the online interview, we must implement our planning properly. So at first on April, we developed the module for online interview. There are several modules, 4 of it. 2 of it is focusing on the physical test of the students, because we also recruit sports science students. So we must have how do we actually conduct the physical test to assess the fitness of the students. Next, we develop the system. We test run the online interview session through WebEx together with the support system on record keeping on the students. And we able to copyright the manual, 6 manual of it on August. And we develop also books that we call it as the interview guidelines through online. Next one is on empowering future-ready educators. We are not only focusing on the online learning itself, alternative assessments, the grading system, and also the online interview. So we have to focus on the most important part, which is actually the lecturers, the talent, the educators who are going to conduct our best practices. This is where we strengthening our future ready educator, where first it had been started earlier before MCO. On January, we revised the committee members of future ready educators, and on April we have been conducted series of aggressive trainings on to prepare our lecturers to be a future ready educators, which is actually to support our best practices of DigiEdu in 2020. And at the end of the year, we produce also what we call the free newsletter as a sharing platform. And next, last but not least, after everything, after the 5 initiative has been set up comprehensively, at the end of it, we set up what we call it the online materials for learning and teaching Omelette. This initiative had been started on June 2020, where we have been developed. We set up first the existing Omelette online courses of 12 series training for FSS staff has been implemented, and we able to set up the portal on September, and launching of it on what we call it on October. And then we having a series of workshop for the lecturers to deposit their learning materials into Omelette. So the next one, after we plan our DigiEdu properly, we implement it throughout the year of 2020. How do we control and coordinate all the initiative? So the control and coordination of DigiEdu is under the faculty, because the implementation process is being controlled and coordinated by the FSS Dean and the task force committees. So we have two divisions. The one is educating. Under the educating goals is led by the deputy deans of academics, focusing on all the initiative related to objective number 1, producing online learning and teaching. As for the objective number 2, to balance the stress and to manage the stress and emotion among the staff and the students, the one is under humanizing, is actually led by the deputy registrar. And how do we control on terms of performance measurement? How do we measure our performance for these best practices? So we produce several reports. The first report is report on online learnings, where we focus on report on online learning training, report on student readiness, report on academic staff readiness. We also produce a statistic on online learning for us to monitor our performance. And we also report on the online alternative assessment. We collect the data on it. And we also look into our data through social media. We conducted analytic data, or we observe it from the social media. So some of the performance measurement that have been done during our best practices in 2020, we able to capture that we had been conducted up to 15 short courses in online learning, 20 online learning clinics. We published 2 guidelines on online learning. This is all the initiative that we able to monitor throughout our best practices. The high impact projects of Omelette till at the end of 2020, the total up to 181 online learning materials has been deposited by the lecturers based on the categories. The highest one is under the categories of technicals, and through these online learning materials at the Faculty of Social Science and Humanities, we able to continue our courses that focusing on technical knowledge, which is actually related to technique and vocational learning, like AutoCAD, computer programming, anything, by producing these online learning materials in the formats of videos. The online learning methods that being used based on our performance measurement, we can see that most of our educators, through the best practices, we are using more on synchronous online learning. Partly is only about 28% on asynchronous online learning at the School of Educations. Slightly different at language academies and the School of Human Resource, where most of the educators, through our best practices, are using more on asynchronous online learning. Some of the findings from the student knowledge, readiness, preparedness level during MCO, it shows that the percentage of student knowledge levels to utilize existing tools for online learning is quite high. Same goes also to the readiness. If we total it from very high and high, it's still more than at the moderate levels. And also we capture the percentage for student preparedness levels to perform an online assessment during MCO. Although majority of students fall under moderate levels, but it looks like when we implement our alternative assessment, the students are able to survive it very well. And in terms of monitoring on the total numbers of courses that we implement it through no final exam, totally on summative assessment, the online final exam, and also the traditional take-home final exam, one of the alternative assessment that have been used under the best practices, the alternative take-home final exam, and also the substitute final exam with assignments and project. So we can see that majority of our courses in 2020 are focusing more on formative assessment, and we did not have a summative up to 91 courses, and total of it is 116. We can see it 116 courses also under the types of substitute final exam with assignment project. We also record our blended learning report on the 1st of April, when UTM announced that online classes took place on 1st of April. During 1st of April and 13th of April, within 2 weeks, we're able to capture that 98.9% of our courses has been conducted online. And the following weeks, if we actually divide it according to postgraduate, for undergraduate is 98.9, for postgraduate 100% has been implemented through online. And we also look at the overall hits of FSS student during COVID-19. The percentage of the hit during online learning, it is quite high, 93.4%. The hit is actually on the hits through the online learning system, and also through the numbers of attendance through the online learning session through WebEx. We monitor also our staff engagement in empowering future-ready educators as part of our performance measurement. It looks like from the 7 workshops that we conducted through our best practices of DGEDU, majority of the staff attend most of the workshop. We can see that workshop number 1 and 2, more than 100% of faculty staff attend it, and workshop 5 and 7 is more than 80% of our staff attend the Future Ready Educators workshop. And some of the issues and challenges in Future Ready Educators, we divided into, this is how we monitor it in terms of interaction limitations, where some of the challenges that we receive from the academic staff, then we actually suggest to them how to tackle the challenges. So for example, for interaction and limitations, so we have a meeting using an online platform, because you know that we not able to have a face-to-face with our staff and with our students, and therefore we actually increase the numbers of online meetings among the lecturers and the student. The subject and course subject talks, this method is more theoretical that unsuitable for project related activities. So this is where we use a project-based learning approach with suitable subject. So some of the subject is theoretical, might be the approach of project-based learning is not appropriate, so we suggest to the lecturers on how to handle it. Some on new buys in problem-based learning. Also, as a solution, we encourage the PBL group member to implement the PBL as teaching approach in any of their course taught, and so on. This is some of the challenges and some of the suggestions to tackle the challenges for Future Ready Educators Initiative. And from our performance measurement and observation towards our best practices of DigiEdu, we can see that before and after. Before the best practices, the participant mindset, it looks like there's some of the educators, they feel there's no urgency to use all the online learning, blended learning approach in their teaching. No time to explore, they might be quite busy with others. No interest to explore, and intimidating, and online learning tools were not important. This is some of their mindset before our best practices. But when after the best practices, we can observe changes of behavior where our friends start to see the importance of using online learning tools. They feel positive and excited to try the tools. They feel more confident and willing to spend time to learn and explore, and they view the online teaching as a non-intimidating. In terms of knowledge and motivation for technologies, before we can see the low levels of ambiguity tolerance between 0 to 3, and after the best practices from our measurement, performance measurement, we observe high levels of ambiguity tolerance between 5 to 8 has been able to achieve from our best practices. From student perspective, what happened to the student learning when we implement these best practices, DigiEdu? When we compare the CGPA of the students from the previous semester, it looks like this in semester 1, 2020-2021, the semester that we implement the best practice of DigiEdu, the percentage of students who receive CGPA between 3.67 to 4.0 has been increased up to 61.10%, while the other range of CGPA has been reduced because more students have received CGPA more than 3.67. In terms of graduate employability, our total graduate employability of Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities during the implementation of best practices is 89.92%, and compared to the UTM graduate employability for the overall is 91.50%, and for the undergraduates is quite high, 86.73%, and PG is about 93.14%. It looks like this graduate employability is higher before is higher than the years that we did not implement best practices, meaning that I can conclude after we implement these best practices, indirectly our graduate employability also increased compared to our performance in 2019. And the numbers of PG and UG courses that implemented through online overall is 99.5%, 100% for PG, 98.9% for undergraduate. We monitor also some data from our social media from Facebook. It looks like the Facebook indicated 904 0.6 kilo minutes were spent on viewing, and the knowledge transfer process takes only 28 seconds based on the average time people spend watching the survey. We monitor also in terms of the follower of our Facebook, and FSS Facebook has received a numbers of 56 female followers plus 43 of male followers after when we implement these best practices, and the page has successfully reached 96 people at least one. And for sustainability, how do we make sure the sustainability of our best practices? For the alternative assessment, we produce a guideline. We produce a guideline for online test, take-home exam, guideline for online interview, FSSH rubric Gen 2.0 to standardize the grading scheme of the lecturers, the guideline for industrial training with the periods of movement control order. We produce this guideline because this guideline is not going to be used by our lecturers at the faculty, but we share this guideline with others outside UTM. This is to to make sure the sustainability of our best practices. In terms of Future Ready Educators, we produce what we call it Future Ready Educators newsletter, and we report it yearly our activities of Future Ready Educators group. Omelette is another initiative, our actions to make sure the sustainability of our best practices. So we have a repository where the students and the the lecturers can deposit their learning materials, and is free and can be accessed by student and public at anywhere at any time. For the open distance learning and online learning, we produce a book chapter. The book chapter has been released by Penerbit to make sure to captures all of the tricks and techniques to implement best practices related to DigiEdu, with a title for Technology Tools for Online Learning. And for the blended learning, we also produce what we call the report, the FSSH UTM experience toward digitizing education, and we continue have our buddy system to assist less technology savvy academic staff. As a CQI, okay, we actually put it in the proper plan, do, check and act. So from the DigiEdu, when we conducted our CQI, we can see that we have a plan on the blended and online learning, on the assessment part, on the learning material platform, on the future ready educators, and for the and also on online learning sustainability. And after we plan it properly, we do it, we implement it through our FSS online learning clinics, 4 workshops, the omelettes, the empowering future ready educators, the knowledge transfer to society. And of course, we check it. How do we check it? We check it through our online learning methods use, the student knowledge readiness, the preparedness. We capture all the data. We also look into the numbers of learning materials that have been deposited into the Omelette system. We look into on the staff engagement in empowering future educators. We monitor our data from the social media, and how do we act towards our check and monitoring part is that we act toward it. We produce the buddy system. The buddy system is continue support system for all the lecturers. We set up the repository by 3 categories. We try to balance and harmonizing the mentals, well-being and spirituals online learning activities among the educators and the students. So with that, I end up my sharing session. Thank you very much to all for your times. We hope that through our best practices DigiEdu, digitalizations of educations at the Faculty of Social Science and Humanities, will be able to give benefits not only to our lecturers and students, but these best practices has able to help us to continue our business in learning and teaching as usual. So the business continuity management at the Faculty of Social Science and Humanity continue and moving forward through our best practices. Thank you very much, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.